Hello and welcome back to another Royal Reviewer transmission. Today is the 6th of July 2023 and I continue with an ongoing story. So yesterday we spoke about how the judge in Prince Harry's case for phone hacking against MGN Group, the Mirror News Group, how the judge was a little bit upset, I suppose. Harry had rankled the judge that he hadn't turned up on day one. Of course, Harry had come in on a later flight. He was recovering from his flight because he didn't want to miss Lilibet's birthday. So the judge, did sort of voice his opinion that perhaps Harry should have been there. It was seen as kind of wasting time, purely because if the first part had gone really, really quickly, they could have started straight into the witness statement right away. So because Harry was not there, they couldn't have done that. So that's why it could have been a waste of time. Anyway, it started today, very, very early. So Prince Harry did arrive by Land Rover or Range Rover, I can't quite remember. It was a big 4x4 and his security team were there, the police were there. So there was plenty of security. And of course, all the paparazzi had been waiting outside for him to come. It was a blink and you miss it moment. He literally just got out and went straight in. The vehicle parked up almost right opposite the door. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to see Prince Harry, but the cameras did get photographs and video. David Sherborne, his lawyer, was there to welcome him. He sort of rubbed him on the shoulder and led him inside. And that was the last we saw of Harry sort of live. Now, of course, in the UK, only in certain circumstances are proceedings televised and recorded. So in this particular case, it doesn't fall into one of those categories where it is. I mean, it's very, very new in this country that we have had some kind of televised courtroom. But it's not commonplace, and obviously this case didn't fall within that remit. So we don't actually get to see a recording of it live. So we have to base what we're commenting on with live reports from journalists inside the courtroom, sort of quoting. We have Harry's witness statement in full. It's supposed to be 55 pages. I do have it. I haven't had a chance to read all the way through it because it's 55 pages. So excerpts from that have been shown in the media. But I might make another video actually going through the witness statement in full. So that was presented obviously to the court. You can find it online if you want to read all of it yourself. And Harry, when he and obviously we only have court drawings, court images. So artists, it's very old-fashioned in the UK. Artists will go in and they will draw the judge or the lawyers, and of course Prince Harry or anyone that's a witness, anyone speaking. So I'm just trying to think. At 10:27, Harry was in the courtroom. I'm reading live updates and then obviously working my way forward to where we are now at the point of making this video. So Harry then swore on the Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. As I said, Harry does have a full day of this in front of him, and possibly half day or a full day tomorrow as well. So he does have quite a long stretch ahead. Now, they wanted to address what he would be called in the courtroom. He was addressed initially as Your Royal Highness. Now, that might confuse some people because people generally assume that he doesn't have the HRH anymore, that it was taken away when he decided to step back. That is not the case. Harry does still have his HRH, as does Meghan, because she's obviously married to Harry. So he still has it. He just doesn't use it for work purposes. But for legal things, on legal documents and forms, on occasions like this, he can still use his HRH because he does have it. So he was addressed as Your Royal Highness initially, and then agreed to be called Prince Harry thereafter. So, what happened to just call me Harry? I'm just saying, he wants to be known as Prince Harry. Anyway, so the witness statement was released. Obviously, you can find that online. Part of Harry's witness statement says that his decision to move to California with Meghan was in a large part due to the constant intrusion, inciting of hatred and harassment by the tabloid press onto every aspect of our private lives, which had a devastating impact on our mental health and well-being. We are also very concerned for the security and safety of our son. Or we were very concerned. So again, setting out the reasons as to why they moved away. Then he said in the witness statement, as a teenager and in my early 20s, I ended up feeling as though I was playing up to a lot of the headlines and stereotypes that they wanted to pin on me, mainly because I thought that if they are printing this rubbish about me and people were believing it, I may as well do the crime, so to speak. It's not an excuse to do bad things. If someone says that you've done something bad, it doesn't kind of give you carte blanche to then go out and do it. I think that was a very messed up way of thinking, and that was a way of thinking that the press didn't have control of. That was Harry's own way of interpreting and dealing with the situation. I don't think that would necessarily be a natural response to a lot of people. I don't think it would have been my response. I mean, it is difficult when, to try and put yourself in another person's shoes and try and think what you would do if you were in that circumstance. But I don't think I would. I genuinely don't think, if somebody said that I was doing this or doing that, I don't think that would make me want to go and do it. I don't think it's justification for doing bad behaviour. In fact, I think it would probably make me more stubborn that I wasn't going to do it and that I was going to show that was. Anyway, that's me. But Harry, I think, has had a damaged past and a damaged history with regards to the loss of his mother, of course, and the press intrusion as a whole. And, it is entirely possible that is how he dealt with it. Just go out there and, I'll just do what they say that I'm doing. It, in a way, it's quite defeatist. It's quite a defeatist way of interpreting it. He says it was a downward spiral whereby the tabloids would constantly try and coax me, a damaged young man, into doing something stupid that would make a good story and sell lots of newspapers. Looking back on it now, such behaviour on their part is utterly vile. I mean, I don't agree with fake stories, but it does show that Harry was damaged, and I think it shows that at that particular point in his life, he didn't have necessarily the tools or the confidence to just say, no, I'm not going to play up to what you're saying I'm doing. He wasn't very Princess Anne. I mean, Princess Anne is Princess Anne. But, you can't imagine a personality like Princess Anne, playing up to what the press are saying about her. She's a very strong character. And I think at that time, Harry most certainly was not strong in himself, and he's obviously stronger now. But anyway, let's continue. So at 10:56, the cross-examination began. So Andrew Green starts by referencing the publisher's apology to him, heard previously in court, for one instance of unlawful activity. So Andrew Green is the lawyer representing the Mirror Group. The court previously heard a private investigator was instructed by a Mirror Group newspaper journalist at the People to unlawfully gather information about Prince Harry's activities at the China White nightclub on one night in February 2004. The article is not one of the claims being brought by the Prince, and there is a whole slew of articles. Green tells the Prince he will be entitled to a more extensive apology if the judge finds the newspaper group were responsible for further acts of unlawful information gathering. So in other words, we'll apologise further, we'll go to more lengths if, in effect, we're found guilty, but we aren't going to do it beforehand, and we certainly aren't going to admit to any guilt. So Andrew Green, who is the newspaper's lawyer, has been and who is going to cross-examine Harry, has been described as a beast in court. He's an award-winning lawyer and has been described by one of his former clients as a beast in court. He is an opponent to be feared with a punchy and aggressive court style. Wow. Uncompromising and relentless, particularly at home, with cross-examination and an ability to put unruly judges back in their boxes. So apparently even judges fear him. Another describes him as having an Eye of Sauron-like focus. Wow. So here we have this beast who even puts judges back in their box, cross-examining Prince Harry. How is Harry going to hold up? Only time will tell. Harry then obviously went on to say that the press has been hostile to him since birth. He even sort of goes on to talk about the alleged rumours that King Charles is not actually his father, that it was James Hewitt. And he made the extraordinary claim that he didn't know that his mother Diana's relationship with James Hewitt started, a short time after Harry was born. I can't believe that nobody told him that. He said he found out around about 2014. I mean, I'm not entirely sure that I can trust Harry's recollections of times and dates. I think from the things that were picked out of Spare that were kind of cross-checked, Harry doesn't have a very good recollection of time schedules and events. That has completely kind of, I think, gone. Partly probably because he's blocked a lot of it out. But anyway, he says in 2014. Now, I think I'd read a book or at least seen an interview or an article or something saying that the relationship with James Hewitt didn't start until after Harry was born. I think shortly after. I don't think there was a big time difference, because I think that was after the birth of Harry. That was when Charles, as Prince of Wales, kind of, I think, effectively checked out of the relationship with Diana. She felt rejected and turned to other people to find comfort. But James Hewitt wasn't until after, and I'm sure I knew that before 2014. So I find it a little bit incredible that Harry didn't know that before 2014. Anyway, I digress. That he also claims that the press want to destroy his marriage. The prince said in the witness statement that the press repeatedly tried to break up his relationships and continued to try and destroy his marriage today. Whenever I got into a relationship, they were very keen to report the details, but would then very quickly seek to try and break it up by putting as much strain on it and creating as much distrust as humanly possible. This twisted objective is still pursued to this day, even though I'm now married. I mean, it is a stretch. I mean, how can you prove that the motive of the reporting is to split up a relationship? The motive of the reporting is probably to sell papers, to sell newspapers, to sell articles, to get clicks, to get advertisers on board, all the rest of it. I doubt very much the objective is to necessarily break them up, although breaking them up would get more stories and whatever. In fact, I would probably say that in terms of press benefits, the amount of stories they get out of Harry and Meghan being together, I think actually Harry and Meghan splitting up, eventually all those stories would kind of peter off. So to be honest, in terms of the press's, in terms of what would benefit the press, they're probably more the golden goose together, to be quite honest. Anyway, he says, I simply don't understand and never have how the inner private details of my relationships could have anything to do with the well-being of society or the running of the country, and therefore be in the public interest. Again, he's questioning what is in the public interest. Is a publicly funded figure, are the intimate details of their lives, does it matter to what goes on in the country? I mean, personally, I don't necessarily think it does. But in terms of who you are dating, I suppose, if potentially anyone that's dating a royal could end up marrying the royal and then could end up being part of the institution. So that would probably be the claim that any journalist or newspaper group would make in terms of, revealing or exposing or commenting or talking about any of the royal family's relationships. So he then explained how his hacking suspicions grew. He said the tabloids would routinely publish articles about me that were often wrong, but interspersed with snippets of truth. This is something that I spoke about yesterday, which I now think were most likely gleaned from voicemail interception and or unlawful information gathering. This created an alternative and distorted version of me and my life to the general public. Now, he did confirm that his voicemails included incredibly private information. He says, as I was very heavily involved with various commitments, I would constantly be leaving and receiving voicemails, as text messaging was much less common back then. I remember those days. It was my main means of communicating with my family, including my mother, who I was obviously extremely close, my girlfriend at the time, my friends, members of the royal household, and those I was working with. Well, don't forget, Diana passed away in 1997. And I mean, I remember back then, I mean, I don't think I got my first mobile phone until 2000, till the year 2000. So 1997 was just a little bit early for mobile phones in the UK to be really popular. We kind of had an explosion sort of 2000, 2001. When I was at college at that point, everyone had mobile phones, and it was the Nokia 3210. So that's sort of how far we're going back in terms of the evolution of phones. Remember, it was at the time when the game of Snake was on the phone, and there were no smartphones. It was just voicemails and text messaging where you had to do the click like number 1 to get an A or whatever it was several times. So prior to his mother's passing, say 1996, would Harry have had a mobile phone? I'm not sure. I mean, mobile phones existed from the 80s. They were those big brick things. But I don't necessarily think they had the ability to text message on them. I think it would have been just phone calls and voice messaging. So I'm not quite sure about, again, Harry's sort of timeline in terms of that. I mean, I certainly don't think he would have been sending his mother text messages on the phones that would have been available back then. Right, I'm going to kind of skip forward again. So we're now looking at 11:18 in the day. Now, he discusses the telltale signs of being phone hacked. He said, I remember on multiple occasions hearing a voicemail for the first time that wasn't new. I would simply put it down to perhaps a technical glitch, or even just having too many drinks the night before and having forgotten that I'd listened to it. So in other words, the journalists were somehow tapping in. They'd learnt a technique of ringing the phone number and then pressing some numbers, and then it would go into the voicemails, and they could listen to the voice messages that had been left. So Harry then, they wouldn't show up as being new for him. He says, I remember on multiple occasions having a voicemail for the first time that wasn't new. Sometimes the voicemail envelope symbol would vanish before I had a chance to listen to the actual voicemail. I also distinctly remember people saying to me, did you not get my voicemail? I was like, no. And sometimes I would go back into my voicemail to look for it, but still couldn't find it. So had it been deleted? I now understand their significance in terms of phone hacking. I believe that both mine and my associates' voicemail messages were hacked by the defendant. And of course, that would have been also true for other members of his family as well. Harry hopes that this is going to stop the press madness. He was asked about a line in his witness statement which reads, how much more blood will stain their typing fingers before someone can put a stop to this madness? Prince Harry says he is talking about journalists responsible for causing a lot of pain and upset, whom he has not named, adding the reference was broadly to the press in general. Asked if he is here to put a stop to this madness, he replied, that is my hope. Now, again, you're going to have to be a little bit more specific than sort of, being vague. And that is what Harry will be pulled up on, I think, throughout all of this. So Then you've got me doing a workout, Prince Harry jokes as he struggles with the many heavy bundles of legal documents being handed to him in court. He had been speaking quietly to the court, a little hesitantly at first, sitting in the witness box with a computer screen in front of him. He seems to be warming up now, throwing in a joke and pushing back on the Mirror Group newspaper's barrister. And I think at one point, possibly when they went, but just before they went for a break, because he was struggling with all these documents, an aide was sent in to assist him. So in his witness statement, again, he says that stories that he believes originated from hacking not only caused security concerns, but damaged his relationships. I would say that actions affected every area of my life. It created a huge amount of paranoia in my relationships. I would become immediately suspicious of anyone that was named in a story about me, whether it was confidants or, for example, family members. I felt that I couldn't trust anybody, which was an awful feeling for me, especially at such a young age. So he uses the word paranoia. In another part of the witness statement, he sort of says that his mother was criticised as being paranoid, but she didn't have paranoia, and that Harry sort of understands how she feels because he kind of feels the same way. But now he's kind of said that he did have paranoia. It created a huge amount of paranoia in my relationships. So which one is it? Were you paranoid or not? He seems to be wrapping himself up in a few knots. Now, talking about Chelsea Davy, he said, I walked into the arrivals hall with a baseball cap on and immediately spotted 5 separate paparazzi sitting on benches with cameras in bags, their hands inside rucksacks, and everyone else looking at me. I remember that someone was videoing me with one of those tiny little cameras between their legs. I recall thinking, how on earth did they know I was going to be there? But now it's obvious. Here were 5 big, burly and dodgy-looking men with their hands in their pockets or in rucksacks and satchels in a busy public place. My security and I simply couldn't know whether they were reaching for a camera or drawing some kind of weapon. Now, I think that is a bit of a stretch. I mean, I don't think the press were going to be, pulling out knives or guns, for instance. Not the press. But in terms of how did they know he was going to be there, they either had a tip-off. I imagine the newspaper would argue that they were tipped off. I think it's going to be difficult for Prince Harry to prove, especially after this much time has now elapsed, to prove that it was phone hacking. Harry also says that Piers Morgan leaves him feeling physically sick. He explains in his statement to the Daily Mirror's then editor Piers Morgan, later wrote he had heard rumours about their meetings. And of course I'm talking about meetings potentially between troubled TV star Michael Barrymore and his late mother. The thought of Piers Morgan and his band of journalists earwigging into my mother's private and sensitive messages makes me feel physically sick, and even more determined to hold those responsible, including Mr. Morgan, accountable for their vile and entirely unjustified behaviour. I mean, again, it's opinion until it's been proven as fact. He said, my paranoia was not misplaced. I understand from my solicitors that these are huge numbers in context of this litigation, especially considering that the defendant is known to have concealed and destroyed evidence of their wrongdoing on an industrial scale. Again, you would have to obviously prove. Prove what had been destroyed as well. I now realise that my acute paranoia of being constantly under surveillance was not misplaced at all. I was also shocked and disgusted to discover that my name and mobile number were in a contact list belonging to known hacker Nick Buckley, which is further proof that I was victim of voicemail interception and unlawful information gathering. Well, no, it proves that your number was on a list of someone that does phone hacking. It doesn't necessarily prove that he actually hacked in. I mean, okay, it's a stretch. The likelihood is that obviously he was. But just having the name on a list doesn't prove it. It's evidence, but it doesn't prove it. Again, just to sort of remind us, this is a test case. If Prince Harry and the other claimants, there are 3 others, win, then the judge will use it to set the level of damages, the amount of money the publisher could pay in other cases from other celebrities. Now, of course, the group has settled some previous cases privately, including Harry's own brother William. So it is quite an important case, and the repercussions of this will be felt. Now, the newspaper's lawyers are pinning Prince Harry down on the detail, as we knew that and expected them to. So there's a pattern emerging in this courtroom battle between Prince Harry and the Mirror Group. The Mirror's lawyer is pinning down Prince Harry with questions about specific details, while Prince Harry is pushing back with more broad brush scepticism about how newspaper stories were gathered. Again, broad brush pushback is not going to wash it. If you say so, Prince Harry replies ironically at one point. But the Mirror barrister persistently pursued Prince Harry on why a Mirror story is being accused of being derived from hacking when much the same story had been in the Mail a few days before. So in other words, saying, hey, this information was published by a different newspaper a few days before, maybe, we're just getting it from second-hand reporting, so to speak. Harry has also been pressed on whether stories were just follow-ups. So let's hear more about one line of questioning Prince Harry is facing. It's put to him that some stories were written by Mirror newspapers as follow-up stories to rival publications, which is what I've just said. Prince Harry says journalists were desperate for anything royal, and any element of our private lives is interesting to the public. Just because there was a story which came out previously doesn't mean there wasn't attempts to take the story further. But again, that doesn't necessarily means phone hacking. He says there was a competitive nature between different news corporations, and Andrew Green, the lawyer, puts to him that it's a little unfair to complain about a story saying Prince Harry was going climbing with his brother rather than attending a gala for the Queen Mother, which had already been published by other newspapers and was in the public domain. I'm just looking now at a court sketch of Prince Harry with the judge and his lawyer, David Sherborne. Again, none of them look particularly happy or smiley. They definitely weren't capturing the moment where Harry shared a joke. Prince Harry is asked about an article about him having Sunday lunch at a gastropub in London's Fulham Road. It's put to him that there are other ways that his whereabouts could have been known to the newspaper that weren't through unlawful gathering. He says, I do not believe that as a witness it's my job to deconstruct the article or be able to answer which parts are unlawfully obtained and which aren't. I think the journalists themselves should be doing that. That is quite flippant and quite blatant. If you're bringing this as a case, I think you do need to know which bits you think have been unlawfully obtained. He's literally just presenting stories and then saying they were obtained by hacking. You do need to know which bits of it potentially had been hacked and which bits could have been potentially given out by friends, or perhaps people saw you in there and fed it back to the press. You do need to be a little bit more specific on the detail. I don't think that's going to wash. Let's look closer at the article about Prince Harry having Sunday lunch. The article in the Daily Mirror's 3 a.m. celebrity gossip column from September 2000 details 2 lunch dates, one with 7 blondes and 2 male friends. The Daily Mirror says a photographer had been tipped off about that pub visit and followed it up. The story adds that the prince had insisted the week before that his bodyguard join him for a pizza. I don't know how anyone would have known I was at this particular pub at this particular time in order to be there taking photographs of me, the prince says in his witness statement. I always found these kind of coincidences to be odd. I now understand that the bylined journalists and the 3 a.m. desk as a whole are well known in this litigation for being involved in phone hacking and other forms of unlawful information gathering. I'm unsure of how the defendant's journalist could have been aware of any private conversation between me and my bodyguard. Again, there needs to be evidence, and I'm not quite sure where Harry's case kind of falls flat. Of course, is where's the evidence, and there's been such an amount of time that has elapsed between then that voicemails sent or whatever are no longer kept and stored. Continuing, he said he doesn't walk in public and couldn't have been seen by bystanders attending the lunch in London's Fulham Road. How did you get there? He's asked by the newspaper publisher's lawyer. By car, from a security perspective. I don't walk down the streets as I get recognised. Now, the publisher's lawyer gets a little bit testy and harsh with Harry. That's not a good answer, says the barrister sharply to one reply, and then he accuses Prince Harry of being in the realms of total speculation. It's about the reporting of Prince Harry getting an injury playing sport at school. From Prince Harry's perspective, he says this could have come from phone hacking, and it created a sense of distrust of those around him, even about going to the doctors. But the Mirror's lawyer, chipping away at the hacking claim, says much of the story had already been published in other news outlets. How did journalists know about detailed medical information? In his witness statement, he says he has seen documentation from the case that suggests the reporter bylined on that story, Jane Kerr, had previously instructed a private investigator. The level of detail in it is just surprising. As to the specific comment made by the defendant's journalist that I had been told by doctors not to play football for a few weeks. In another 2001 story, the Sunday Mirror detailed potential damage to the young prince's spine from playing polo, information he says he did not share with classmates. It's not at all clear to me how the defendant got this kind of information, says the prince in his statement. Then, after 2.5 hours, the court paused for lunch. So, after lunch, I think they resumed and asked the question when Harry got his mobile phone. This should be interesting. Earlier in court, the lawyer for Mirror Group newspapers referred to a line in Prince Harry's witness statement which says he believes he was the first given a mobile phone when he started Eton in 1998. It is possible, but I don't think the ones that were on the market necessarily had text messaging. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think they did. If this is the case, a 1996 Daily Mirror article with the headline "Diana so sad on Harry's big day" could not have involved any hacking of his mobile phone, lawyer Andrew Green says. So he is, I suppose, presenting articles that were before the time when he says that he had a mobile phone. Prince Harry replies that his security at school had a separate room with a landline, and his complaint about the 1996 article is that it is inexplicable how the newspaper got the information. His witness statement says the reporter can be linked to private investigator payments, but Green says it's speculation that Diana had been hacked. So in other words, he's saying maybe I was phoning a family member, maybe I was phoning my mother, saying that information, and that she had been hacked, and that's how it had gone. But of course, in that respect, that would be Diana's claim, and of course that Diana isn't here to make that claim. So that particular article may get thrown out on the technicality that it wasn't Harry's phone that had been hacked. It was Harry's message, but not necessarily his phone. Let's go up again. So we're up to 13:53, which is close to the time that I am now sat here recording this. So there have been no knockout blows so far in this courtroom battle. Prince Harry seems to be growing in confidence after a rather nervous start, while the Mirror's barrister Andrew Green is becoming increasingly direct in his challenges. The Mirror's lawyer has been strong on the detail, we expected this, repeatedly highlighting that some of these stories claimed to be the result of phone hacking had already been published by other newspapers, and I would expect those articles will probably get thrown out. The implication is that this was copying someone else's story rather than hacking someone's phone. But Prince Harry has focused more on the impact, talking about the paranoia produced by private information being published about him. That's irrelevant. That's whiff-waff. Basically, the impact of it, is important to know, but that is not what they will be looking at when it comes to detail. And the reply he keeps using is that it should be journalists explaining where they get the stories, not the person being written about. But then it's the person being written about that's bringing the claim. After both sides warming up with the opening session, will the Mirror's barrister now want to put more pressure on Prince Harry's claims in the time remaining in the witness box? I would expect so. And that is where we've gotten up to we are at 8 minutes past 2 on day one of Harry's witness giving or being in the courtroom. So anything that happens after this won't be in this video. I will, of course, make another video sort of completing this series of videos on, I think, Thursday. It will have to be Thursday because I'm out all day tomorrow, unfortunately. So please let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I am intrigued as to how you think this is going. I do think that Harry will be increasingly questioned a lot more directly. I think there will be a point when any broad strokes, any broad sweeping sort of statements will be just kind of brushed aside, because that is not getting to the detail. And as we expect in a case like this, it's all very detailed, all very fact driven. Personally, on a personal level, I do think that Harry and other members of the royal family and other celebrities were extensively hacked during that time period. I do also think that it is wrong that that happened. I'm just not sure how much evidence survives today that actually could pin that down. A lot of it is circumstantial evidence, in my opinion, rather than being here are facts that we can actually, present to you. The judge agreeing with many of these sort of claims would be, I think, going with going with an overview rather than necessarily looking at the actual fact. And remember, there is no jury in this case. The decision wholly and fully rests with the judge. Thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, then please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media, and of course do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. So from me, mwah, to you all, and goodbye.